I live in a small, weather-beaten cottage near the old lighthouse on the rugged coast of Maine. Its towering form a silent sentinel over the tumultuous sea. The sound of waves crashing against the jagged rocks below has become a constant companion, a rhythmic heartbeat to the life I now lead. The lighthouse itself is a relic of a bygone era, its stone walls etched with the marks of time and the relentless assault of the elements. Each night, the lighthouse comes alive. The powerful beam sweeps across the inky blackness, piercing the gloom and illuminating the restless waves for miles around. Its light is both a comfort and a curse, warding off unseen dangers while casting long, eerie shadows that dance across the landscape. There's something haunting about the way those shadows move, as if they have a life of their own. The wind here is a constant howl, a mournful wail that seeps through the cracks in the walls and whispers through the eaves. It carries with it the scent of salt and seaweed, mingling with the faint, acrid tang of rust and decay. On stormy nights, the wind's cry becomes almost human, a chilling lament that makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. It's on these nights that the lighthouse feels the most alive, its presence looming large and oppressive. The keeper's quarters, long abandoned, remain untouched, filled with dusty relics of a life once lived. An old oil lamp, a worn leather-bound journal, and a pair of spectacles left on the bedside table, all silent witnesses to the passage of time. Sometimes, in the dead of night, I hear things. Footsteps echoing on the wooden floors above, the faint clink of metal against metal, and a distant, ghostly laughter carried on the wind. I tell myself it's just the building settling, the wind playing tricks on my mind, but there's a part of me that wonders. I've read the stories, the old legends of shipwrecks and lost souls, of keepers who went mad from the isolation and the incessant haunting cry of the sea. The villagers, those who still live nearby, speak in hushed tones about the lighthouse. They call it the watchtower of ghosts and warn of spirits that wander the cliffs, forever searching for the ships they couldn't save. Their tales are filled with sorrow and madness, and though I am not a superstitious person, it's hard not to feel a shiver of unease when the night is at its darkest and the wind howls like a banshee. During the day, the lighthouse stands as a solitary beacon of hope, its stark white paint gleaming in the sunlight, a symbol of guidance and safety. But as night falls, it transforms into something else entirely, a monolith of mystery and melancholy, a keeper of secrets long buried beneath the waves. Living here so close to the coast has a way of changing you. The isolation, the relentless presence of the sea, and the ever-watchful eye of the lighthouse create a sense of detachment from the everyday world. Time seems to stretch and warp, and the line between reality and the supernatural blurs. Each creak, each whisper, each flash of the lighthouse beam feels laden with meaning, a reminder that here, at the edge of the abyss, we are but fleeting shadows in a place where time and tide hold sway. And so I remain, a solitary watcher in the night, living in the shadow of the lighthouse on the Maine coast, where the past lingers like a mist, and the ghosts of yesteryears whisper their secrets to those who dare to listen. My name is Jacob, and I've always been drawn to the sea. It's a calling that can't be ignored, something woven into the very fabric of my being. I retired a few months ago after spending decades working on lighthouses, those silent sentinels standing alone against the unforgiving waves. My last post was at Pharos Light, 5 miles out at sea, where the horizon stretched endlessly and the nights were punctuated by the rhythmic sweep of the beam. Retirement was supposed to be the end of that chapter. I imagined myself at home, tinkering with model ships and watching the waves from a safe distance. But the call came, urgent and insistent, pulling me back to the life I thought I had left behind. The lighthouses were being automated one by one, and they were struggling to find skilled people to finish the job. They needed me. I couldn't refuse. The idea of those lighthouses, my lighthouses, falling into neglect was unbearable. I packed my gear, said goodbye to the comforts of home, and boarded the small supply boat that would take me back to my solitary perch in the ocean. The journey was familiar, yet each wave, each gust of wind, felt like a warning from the depths. When Pharos Light came into view, its tall white structure against the darkening sky, I felt a chill run down my spine. This was my domain, a place where I had spent countless hours battling the elements and ensuring the safety of countless ships. The first few days were a blur of activity. The automation systems were intricate, blending modern technology with the rugged simplicity of the lighthouse. I worked long hours, my hands moving with a confidence born of years of experience. The sea was a relentless presence, its sounds and smells a constant reminder of its power. Each night, as the sun dipped below the horizon, I would climb to the top and watch the beam cut through the gathering darkness. There was something unsettling about that light, casting shadows that seemed to dance and twist in unnatural ways. The isolation weighed heavy on my mind, the silence broken only by the eerie cries of seabirds and the distant crash of waves. As the days turned into weeks, a sense of unease settled over me. The work was demanding, but there was an underlying tension, a feeling that I was not alone in Pharos light. Whispers seemed to echo through the corridors, fleeting glimpses of movement in the corners of my vision. I dismissed it as fatigue, a trick of the mind in the solitude of the sea. One evening, as I sat on the small deck outside the living quarters, I heard a faint, mournful wail carried on the wind. It chilled me to the bone, a sound that seemed to echo from deep within the ocean itself. Goosebumps pricked my skin as I scanned the dark waters below, half expecting to see a spectral figure emerge from the depths. The final lighthouse was the most challenging. It stood on a jagged, windswept outcrop, buffeted by relentless waves and obscured by a thick, swirling fog. The automation equipment had to be installed with meticulous care, every sensor and wire placed as if guided by an unseen hand. I worked through the night, the beam of the light casting eerie shadows that danced along the walls. As dawn broke, I stood back and looked at my work. It was done. Pharos light was ready to join the ranks of the automated, its light now controlled by a distant computer. A sense of relief washed over me, mingled with a lingering sense of unease. I had done my part, ensuring that these guardians of the sea would continue their watch. I boarded the supply boat for the last time, Pharos light shrinking into the mist as we headed back to shore. I knew this was truly the end of my career. The sea, the lighthouses, they were in my blood, but it was time to let go. As we neared the shore, I looked back one last time. Pharos light stood tall and proud, its light piercing the fog like a spectral beacon. And in that moment, I felt a presence beside me, a fleeting touch of cold air, and a whisper carried on the wind. The keepers might be gone, but their spirits lingered in the shadows, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there is always a guiding light to show the way. The sun was beginning to set, casting long shadows across the deserted beach as I walked along the shore. The rhythmic sound of waves crashing against the sand was usually soothing, but today it felt ominous. The old lighthouse loomed in the distance, perched on the cliff's edge like a forgotten guardian. Its light had been extinguished years ago when it was deemed unsafe, and ever since, strange occurrences had been reported by the few who dared to get close. I had always been drawn to mysteries, and the tales surrounding the lighthouse were too intriguing to resist. They spoke of figures appearing in the windows, strange lights flickering in the dead of night, and whispers that carried on the wind, incomprehensible yet chilling. As I walked, the salty sea breeze brushed against my face, bringing with it the faint scent of seaweed and brine. I could see the lighthouse more clearly now, its once white paint now faded and peeling, the glass in its lantern room shattered. The metal railing around the top was rusted and broken in places, a stark reminder of the structure's disuse and neglect. My heart pounded with a mix of excitement and trepidation. I reached the rocky path that led up to the lighthouse, the stones slick with algae and treacherous underfoot. I carefully picked my way up, the sense of unease growing with each step. The lighthouse towered above me, its dark silhouette stark against the fiery hues of the sunset. I reached the base and stood before the heavy wooden door, which was slightly ajar. I hesitated for a moment, listening to the silence that seemed to press in from all sides. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open, the hinges groaning in protest. The interior was dim, illuminated only by the light filtering through the cracks and broken windows. I stepped inside, the air heavy with the smell of mold and decay. Dust motes danced in the weak light, and the floorboards creaked under my weight. The ground floor was filled with old rusted machinery and decaying furniture, remnants of a bygone era. As I made my way up the spiral staircase, the sense of being watched grew stronger. I paused on each landing, straining to hear any sound over the pounding of my heart. There was nothing but the eerie silence and the distant crash of waves. I finally reached the lantern room, the highest point in the lighthouse. The view from up here was breathtaking, the ocean stretching out endlessly, the sun now a mere sliver on the horizon. But the beauty of the scene was lost on me as I felt an inexplicable chill run down my spine. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft and unintelligible, like a breath of wind, but with an unmistakable human quality. I turned, but there was no one there. The room was empty. My heart raced as the whisper grew louder, more insistent. It seemed to be coming from everywhere and nowhere at once. Panicking, I backed away, my eyes scanning the room for any sign of movement. My flashlight flickered, and in that brief moment of darkness, I saw them. Figures, their faces pale and eyes hollow, appearing and disappearing in the blink of an eye. I bolted down the staircase, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The whispers followed me, growing louder and more frantic. I reached the ground floor and stumbled out the door, nearly falling as I hit the rocky path. The fog had rolled in, thick and suffocating, swallowing the beach and the sea. I could barely see a few feet in front of me, but I didn't stop running until I reached the safety of my car parked further down the shore. I threw myself inside, locking the doors and gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. The whispers faded, replaced by the pounding of my heart and the sound of my own heavy breathing. I glanced back at the lighthouse, now barely visible through the fog, and swore I saw a faint light flicker in the lantern room before everything went dark again. As I drove away, the whispers echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder of the mystery I had sought and the terror I had found. The lighthouse, it seemed, was determined to keep its secrets, and those who dared to uncover them. The experience at the lighthouse haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those fleeting figures, their ghostly presence etched into my memory. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, of the whispers that followed me like a haunting melody. I found myself researching the history of the lighthouse, hoping to uncover clues that would explain what I had witnessed. The stories I uncovered were as unsettling as they were vague. Tales of tragedies at sea, of keepers gone mad, and of a presence that lingered long after the light had faded. One account stood out among the rest, an old journal found buried in a local archive. It belonged to a lighthouse keeper from the early 20th century, detailing his time at the now defunct structure. His entries grew increasingly erratic, filled with mentions of phantoms in the mist and voices that speak in tongues. According to the journal, the keeper had been warned by locals to avoid the lantern room after sunset, claiming it was cursed ground. He wrote of strange lights flickering in the dead of night, of shadows that moved without cause, and of a voice that whispered secrets he could never decipher. The final entry was dated the night before the lighthouse was decommissioned. It described a desperate attempt to confront the entities that haunted him, to uncover the truth behind their restless souls. But the pages ended abruptly, leaving the mystery unresolved. Armed with this newfound knowledge, I returned to the lighthouse, determined to confront whatever had driven the keeper to madness. The path up the cliff seemed steeper now, the air thick with a palpable sense of foreboding. The lighthouse stood before me like a silent sentinel, its broken windows staring out into the gathering dusk. I pushed open the heavy door once more, my heart pounding in my chest. The interior was as I remembered it, still and eerie, filled with the remnants of a forgotten past. I retraced my steps up the spiral staircase, each turn bringing me closer to the lantern room where I had last heard the whispers. The climb felt endless, the weight of the keeper's journal heavy in my backpack. I reached the lantern room and stepped inside, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. The room was empty, but the air hummed with an otherworldly energy, a sense of anticipation that prickled my skin. I waited, my breath held in anticipation, half expecting the figures to appear once more. But there was only silence, no whispers, no flickering lights, just the steady rhythm of waves crashing against the cliff below. As I stood there, disappointment mingled with relief. I noticed something glinting in the corner, a tarnished brass key, half buried in the dust. I picked it up, turning it over in my hands. It was cold to the touch, heavy with history. With a sudden resolve, I knew what I had to do. The key fit snugly into the lock of a weathered wooden chest tucked away in the corner of the lantern room. I opened it slowly, the hinges creaking in protest. Inside, I found a collection of old photographs, yellowed with age but surprisingly well preserved. They depicted the lighthouse in its glory days, a beacon of hope against the stormy sea. Among the photographs was a folded piece of parchment, its edges frayed and brittle. I unfolded it carefully, my hands trembling. The parchment contained a handwritten letter, addressed to whomsoever seeks the truth. It spoke of lost souls bound to the lighthouse, trapped between worlds by a tragedy long forgotten. The letter urged whoever found it to break the curse, to release the spirits from their eternal torment. It detailed a ritual, a solemn vow to honor the memory of those who had perished under the lighthouse's watchful gaze. As I read the words aloud, a strange sensation washed over me, a feeling of peace, of closure. The air grew lighter, the oppressive atmosphere lifting like a fog dissipating in the morning sun. I closed my eyes, offering a silent prayer for the souls that had lingered for so long. When I opened them again, the lantern room was bathed in a warm, golden light, the same light that had once guided sailors to safety. I felt a presence beside me, fleeting yet comforting, a whisper of gratitude carried on the breeze. And as I descended the spiral staircase for the final time, I knew that I had uncovered the lighthouse's greatest secret. Not a tale of terror, but a story of redemption and release. The whispers had finally ceased, replaced by the gentle lull of waves against the shore, a testament to the power of uncovering the truth, however elusive it may seem.